Hey, what's up you guys? Today I am stealing a video from Jennifer Brooks that I really enjoyed recently. She spoke about books that she had DNF'd, specifically classics, and I just really enjoyed her video and I realised that I have DNF'd quite a lot of classics myself, so I thought it'd be fun to share them with you and talk about which books it was, why I DNF'd them, and if I'll go back to them in the future. Spoiler alert, most of them I would like to give a second chance, but realistically, will that actually happen? I don't know, we'll see. If you enjoyed this video, definitely go and check out Jennifer's. I'll have it linked in the description, and please leave a like. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe, and let's get started talking about the first book. So the first book that I want to talk about is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This was published in 1925, and it is a modernist novel about this woman, Mrs. Dalloway, as she goes about her daily activities in preparation for a party that she's hosting later that night. This book is literally like 130 pages or something like that. It is so short, and I struggled so much. I was reading about 5 pages at a time and then falling asleep, or just like my eyes were like just drifting off the page, or my mind was wandering. Like I could not focus on this book, and I think I got to like 90 pages in or something like that, so I had like nothing left, and I was like, you know what, I cannot finish this. Like it was only 40 pages, which, you know, I could read in about less than half an hour if I skim read a little bit. But I physically could not bring myself to finish Mrs. Dalloway. That's how much I hated it. The issue is the writing style is just so stream of consciousness that like everything is just blending all together. There's dialogue, thoughts, surrounding settings, everything is just blended into one, and I found it so hard to follow, and I found that it was just boring, to be honest, as well. Like I didn't care about this woman's life or what she was thinking about. And there is like some deeper themes about like the war, I'm pretty sure, and like some, I think there's like gender issues are brought up a little bit, but to be honest, I just could not focus on it. Like no matter how hard I tried, my eyes just gave up after about 5 pages every single time. So eventually I just had to admit to myself, like, I cannot finish this book. I hate it so much. I'd already read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and I didn't like that one either, but I decided to give her another chance because Mrs. Dalloway was her most popular book, and I just could not bring myself to do it. And again, because it is like so popular and so famous and like so influential, I feel like I should finish it at some point, but to be honest, like I just have no motivation at all to ever go back to Virginia Woolf or any of her work. The second book I'm going to talk about is The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This was published in 1796, and it is a early gothic horror type novel about the downfall of a monk into sin, and there's also a subplot about like a romance between like a nun and someone else, which is obviously forbidden because she's a nun. And I was so excited for this book. Like I saw it for the first time in Waterstones, and I saw the cover, and the cover is like a demon carrying a man away like in his mouth. I'll have it up here anyway. And I just thought, like, it caught my eye so much, and I'd never heard anyone talk about it. I went home, looked it up, seen that it's apparently supposed to be like actually really gory. It was really shocking for its time. It deals with a lot of like sensitive subjects that even today are still, you know, kind of taboo, and I just thought it sounded so cool. And then I was in a secondhand bookstore and I seen it, and I was like, okay, this is fate. I was just thinking about this book like last week, so I bought it, and I was so excited to read it. I actually started it, I bought it in Belfast, and I started reading it in the airport on the way home, and my excitement slowly dropped because I did not understand anything that was happening in this book. I think because it was written in 1796, it is just like a completely different style of, you know, writing. And although I do read a lot of classics, this was just like beyond my comprehension level at the time. This was 2019, so I think now I maybe follow it a bit better, but I was pretty much reading like a couple pages and then looking up a plot summary and making sure I understood like what I just read. And to be fair, I actually was following it for the most part, but then there's other things where the plot summary would say something happened and I was like, I just completely missed that. So it was just like not fun to read, to be honest. It was feeling a lot like homework, and it just wasn't enjoyable. So I was like, okay, why am I forcing myself to read this? But I am still so intrigued by the fact that it is like apparently so shocking and like gory, and you know, a lot of crazy stuff happens in it apparently. So I do want to give it another chance eventually, and I still own it because I have like the Penguin Classics edition that I collect. So this one is one that I do think I want to go back to at some point in the future, but for now, like, it just scares me. Kind of similar to The Monk, we have Paradise Lost by John Milton. This was published for the first time in 1667, so even earlier than The Monk. And again, this was one I was so excited for because it's just one of those stories that everyone's heard of. Like, everyone knows what Paradise Lost is. It's all about like the Bible and Satan and stuff like that. So I was really excited for it because I love like religious imagery and things like that. So I picked it up for Classics-a-thon, or Ancients-a-thon, sorry, it was. And I just could not understand a word of it. It's written in the form of like a super long epic poem, and I just had no idea what was going on at all. I think I read about 3 chapters physically, and then I was like, I'm just reading this to say I read it. Like, nothing is going in my brain. I'm just reading these words and not taking anything in. I'm just reading the words for the sake of reading the words. And then I tried the audiobooks. I thought maybe that would help, but no, it was just as bad, if not worse. Like, the audiobook did nothing for me. I listened to the audiobook for about 10 minutes and I was like, okay, refund please. Like, I just did not understand anything that was going on. And again, this is one that hypothetically I would love to go back to at some point in the future, but realistically I just know that it's not for me. Like, I didn't understand anything that was happening. Like, I didn't understand anything, to be honest. So there's no point in me reading it. And, you know, maybe if I was in school or something, like studying English, and like we had a teacher going through like line by line, like understanding all the references and the biblical meanings and everything like that, then maybe it would like be worth it. But for me, on my own, sitting in my house like reading, it was not fun, and I'm not going to go back to it, I don't think. Another one that I picked up for Ancients-a-thon was the poetry of Safal. Safal is an ancient Greek poet who gave her name to the word sapphic that is used now to describe women loving women. It's, you know, a different term for lesbian that also includes like bisexual women and stuff like that. I'm sure if you're on BookTube you probably know that. It's quite a popular word on here. But yeah, her poems I was really excited again to get to. I've heard a lot about them and I do want to read them eventually for one of my LGBT classics videos, which will be returning at some point. I've just been like in a little bit of a reading slump the last couple months. But yeah, so I was really excited to start her poetry, and then I realised that the book that I was reading, the Penguin Classics one, gives a lot of historical context and a lot of descriptions of like what the poems mean and, you know, why they were written and stuff like that, which obviously is a good thing, like it is interesting, but I just realised like I didn't care. There's more, you know, historical background than there is poetry, and although I want to read the poetry, I don't really want to read all that historical background, to be honest, at this point in my life anyway. Like, I think history is more interesting than it actually is to me. Like, I love the idea of learning about like ancient Greece, for example, and then when it actually comes to reading about it, I'm like, okay, this is kind of boring. I don't know, like, I just don't find it as interesting as I wish I did. So again, this one is one that I do definitely think I'll go back to at some point, especially because I want to talk about it in one of those videos. But right now, I just thought it was boring, and I could have just read the poems and not the historical stuff, but then I feel like I'd be missing like all the context, and you know, wouldn't be the full experience of reading her poetry. So that one again is like on the back burner for now, but definitely one I do think I will return to. Speaking of poetry, I also tried to read a poetry collection by Ted Hughes, who was the husband of Sylvia Plath. Obviously, I have been like obsessed with Sylvia Plath over the last few months, so I thought I would give her husband's poetry a try, just to, you know, compare his to hers and see what his was all about, just because he is like quite a big figure in her life, obviously. So I was reading a collection that was from 1957 to 1981, I believe. I have the cover here anyway. And although I did enjoy it, it was just too like thick. It was just too big a collection that I got bored, to be honest. Like, a lot of his poems are about animals and nature and things like that, which I do enjoy. I love like nature descriptions and nature writing and stuff, to a point. Like, where every single poem was starting to get a little bit repetitive to me, I just like zoned out and I just lost motivation to pick it up. And I don't think that you necessarily have to read like a whole collection of poetry to understand his work. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I know what his poetry is about. It doesn't appeal to me as much as hers do, because hers are much more emotional and, you know, raw about like mental health and stuff. And although his was good and I did like it, it just didn't like speak to me on the same level. So this one I don't really even fully count it as a DNF, but I did take off my currently reading shelf on Goodreads and I didn't mark it as reading, so I guess it is a DNF. But yeah, Ted Hughes poetry, it was good, but it just got repetitive, to be honest. That was the main thing. It just was the same kind of stuff over and over again about like animals and nature, and I was like, okay, I get it. A non-fiction book that I DNF'd was Why Read the Classics by Italo Calvino. I've never actually said his name out loud, I think that might be right. But this is a collection of essays about why you should read classic literature, and I obviously read classics and enjoy classics, so I thought this would be like right up my alley. I think it was Jennifer Brooks that I saw talk about it, who was already linked down below. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting to me. And then I got it and I realised that he talks a lot about ancient classics, which I haven't really read. As you know from this video, like the few that I have tried to read, I've DNF'd them all. And then he also just talks about like a lot of random books that I didn't even really know. Like I've got it right here. So some of the ones he talks about as like Mark Twain, the man that corrupted Hadleyburg. Like Mark Twain wrote Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and I'm like, okay, surely you'd think that he would speak about those two books, which I have read. No, he speaks about this random book that I haven't read. The Charles Dickens book that he talks about is Our Mutual Friend. Like, I mean, I have heard of that one, but I don't know anything about it. Robert Louis Stevenson, he talks about The Pavilion on the Links. Again, I know quite a few Robert Louis Stevenson books. Never heard of that one. So it's just a lot of classics that I haven't read and I don't care about. So I started this one, like the very first essay is just called Why Read the Classics and is like kind of an introduction. And then the next one is The Odysseys within the Odyssey. And I was like, okay, I haven't read the Odyssey, but I know what it's about. I do want to read it at some point. And I was reading it and I was like, I just don't care. Like that starts on page 11 and it ends on page 19. Like these are quite short and I never finished it. Like it was 8 pages long and I was like, I don't care. So yeah, this was a bit of a bust, but maybe at some point in the future I'll go back to it if I have read like specific books that he's talking about. I don't think I'll ever sit and like read this whole thing, but if I actually read, you know, one of those books that he does talk about, then I can see myself like going to see what he then thinks about it. But yeah, just not what I was expecting. The final book I'm going to talk about is one that I read way back at the start of my booktube journey in January 2019, and it is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. It was published in 1961, and this is my dad's favourite book. He has read it like 1,000 times, and I bought him the nice Folio Society version of this book, or edition I should say. So I do really want to give it another chance, and to be honest, I can't really remember my thoughts and feelings on it at the time because it was so long ago, but it is about these men in the military who are trying to like keep their sanity, but also they're trying to get home. So I think some of them pretend they're insane. I can't really remember, to be honest, at this point. But I just found it so confusing. I'm pretty sure it's a non-linear storyline. Like it jumps back and forth in time, which I'm not a fan of. And I'm pretty sure it's just like quite absurd in some different ways. Again, this is why I listened to the last one in this video, because I don't fully remember my thoughts and feelings, but I just didn't enjoy it. But I think that I just didn't really understand it, and I think that if I read up a little bit more about it and go into it prepared for what it is, then I'll probably enjoy it more, because back when I did read it, I hadn't really read any books that were like non-linear and stuff like that. So I think now that I know what to expect, I'll probably enjoy it more. But yeah, this was so long ago that I don't really remember my thoughts and feelings, but I just wanted to throw it in because it was actually the first classic that I DNF'd. So those are all the books that I'm going to talk about today. There's probably a few others that I can't remember, but for now, these are all the ones that I have DNF'd and left a lasting impression on me. If you have read any of these before, let me know your thoughts on them down below. If you also DNF'd them, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you love them, again, let me know why, and you know, maybe you'll change my mind and I'll give them another chance. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and please subscribe. Definitely go and check out Jennifer's video, that is linked in the description, and I will see you in my next video.